My parents insisted they only had funds for one daughter's vacation. Their choice? My sister. What happens when the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally decide your worth for you? What happens when you're forced to realize that the family you've sacrificed everything for sees you not as a daughter, but as an endless resource? The air in their house that night was thick with a silence I'd grown too accustomed to, heavy with all the things they wouldn't say, all the things I wouldn't say. The kitchen glowed softly, the chicken I'd cooked still warm on the table, napkins folded just so. It was a Tuesday evening, just like any other, except this was the night my mom looked across the table and casually mentioned that they only had enough money to take one daughter on vacation. And they'd chosen Vivian. It just wasn't enough to take both girls, she said, her voice light, dismissive. Both girls. As if I was still a child. I was 29, for crying out loud, and I'd just paid off their mortgage. My dad didn't even look up from his phone. You're an adult, Eleanor. Pay for your own vacation. Vivian, my sister, just smiled over her mashed potatoes. Don't worry, Ellie. I'll send you pictures. My dad actually laughed. Something inside me just shattered. There was no sound, no dramatic crack. Just a cold grip around my heart, my jaw tightening until it ached. I stared at the tablecloth for a few seconds too long. I cleared the dishes, washed the roasting pan, even scrubbed the wine stain off Mom's favorite coaster before it could set. Then, I walked into my room, opened my laptop, and pulled up 10 years of bank statements. Every transfer, every emergency, every just this once more. The fridge, the washing machine, the dryer, the sofa Mom said helped her back, the TV Dad said he deserved. The $821 meant for my college fund. I tallied it all up in a yellow notebook, $112,119. I stared at the number until it stopped looking like money and just became a stark, unforgiving truth. The next morning, I called Brenda Holloway, a lawyer. She gave me one instruction. Keep it clean. Document everything. Don't take any gifts. Only take what's yours. For 2 weeks, I pretended nothing had changed. I hemmed Vivian's pants for her trip. I drove Mom to Target for travel-sized toiletries. I nodded politely while Dad complained about the airport parking. Every night, after they were asleep, I organized, photographed, and scanned. The morning they left, Mom gave me a kiss on the cheek. Keep an eye on the mail, dear. I will, I said. Vivian poked her head out the door. Don't go into my room. I won't, I replied. Dad loaded the last suitcase into the van. Enjoy the quiet, he grumbled. I will, I said, and for the first time in years, it was the absolute truth. I stood on the curb, watching the van disappear around the corner. Then, I called the movers. Marcus and Julian arrived at 10. I handed Marcus a binder titled Reality. Every receipt, every bank statement, every warranty. Everything I'm taking is documented. I told them. Before you move anything, just ask me. Marcus flipped through the first few pages. You point, he said, we carry. First came the TV, unmounted from the wall. Then the sofa, the armchairs, the coffee table I'd built myself while my dad watched, muttering about how I was better at these kinds of things. The fridge, the washing machine, the dryer. My room was last. By afternoon, the house felt hollow. My footsteps echoed differently. I placed an envelope on the kitchen counter. It simply said family. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Every dollar listed, every year dated. I'm not your emergency plan anymore. I'm not the second daughter when affection is handed out, and the first one you call when money runs short. Eleanor. I placed the house key on top of the envelope. I got in my car and drove away, not once looking in the rearview mirror. 3 days later, I was sitting in a cabin in the Colorado mountains, blue kitchen cabinets, pine trees outside the window, when the messages started rolling in. Where is everything? Call me immediately. This is unacceptable. Your mother is crying. What is wrong with you, Eleanor? No one asked if I was okay. No one asked why. I poured myself another coffee. Then my lawyer called. The officer they called reviewed the documentation. He told them it was a property dispute, not a crime. She paused. You're allowed to be angry, Eleanor. What they're not allowed to do is claim what's yours, just because it was convenient for them to use it. I slumped into the kitchen chair. So it's over? Legally, yes. I laughed, tears streaming down my face, alone with the mountains outside the window, and no one to tell me to calm down. Vivian called 3 days after that. My phone vibrated on the table at 7:10 a.m. I let it ring 3 times before picking up. Where's my table? She demanded. No good morning. Which table? I asked. The one in the living room. The coffee table. I could hear the TV in the background. We've been here for 3 days, Eleanor. My mom's sitting on the living room floor. On the floor? I scoffed. I made that table. You made it for the house, she shrieked. I made it with my own hands, with what I paid for, in the garage by myself, while you guys watch TV inside. She went silent, then her voice sharpened. You're a thief. I watched the steam rise from my coffee. Brenda Holloway, I said. Write down that name. That's my lawyer. Anything you want to claim, tell her. You put a lawyer on your own family? She gasped. You called the police before asking if I was even alive. I hung up. I didn't throw the phone. I didn't scream. I just placed it face down on the table, noticing my right hand was trembling. Only my right one. I walked barefoot onto the porch, the cold seeping into the soles of my feet. There were still things in the back of my pickup I hadn't brought inside. 2 lamps, boxes of clothes, and way in the back, my grandmother's toolbox. Green, worn metal at the corners, held together with the same wire as always. I carried it down myself. It was heavier than it looked. Inside were her saws, the chisels with their worn handles, the folding wooden ruler, and the rag she used to wipe the blades before putting them away. It still smelled of oil. My grandmother used to build chairs in the yard of her house in Mesa. I'd come home from school and sit on the step, just watching her. She rarely spoke to me. Sometimes she'd hand me sandpaper and point to a leg. If I went too fast, she'd take it from my hand and give it back. Again, nobody pays you to rush. When she died, my father sold her workbench in less than 2 weeks. I only found out because I went looking for it, and it was gone. He said he needed the space and that it wasn't a real career anyway. I was 19, already paying the house's electricity bill. I didn't say anything. At 23, I built that coffee table in the garage with a borrowed saw. My dad came out twice to watch me sand, beer in hand. The second time, without bending down, he said, "You're better at these kinds of things." He said it the way you'd say someone was good at washing dishes. I showered, pulled on my sneakers, and grabbed my keys. I drove 20 minutes into town. Next to the gas station was a lumber yard with pine planks stacked outside. The man behind the counter was tall, with a white beard. Walter. He asked what I was building. I opened my mouth, and nothing came out. No one had ever asked me that before. A table, I finally said. To sell or for myself, I don't know yet. He charged me $8 and helped me load the boards into the truck. He just shrugged. Bring me a photo when it's done. I didn't get back until night. I set up 2 sawhorses on the porch, turned on the outdoor light, and took out my grandmother's saw. The first cut went crooked. I stared at the wavy line, feeling that familiar heat rise in my face, that old useless feeling bubbling up from my gut. I measured again and started over. The second cut followed the grain, sounding even and dry, filling the entire porch. Sawdust fell onto my sneakers and into my hair. It smelled of freshly cut pine. I cut 7 boards, blisters forming on my fingers, but I didn't stop. By 2 a.m., my hands were black, my back stiff, and 4 planed pieces rested on the sawhorses. Inside, my phone kept vibrating against the table. My mom, my dad, Vivian, and Dorothy. I didn't answer any of them. I sat on the step, under the burning lamp, staring at the wood. I was tired. For the first time in 10 years, I was tired from something that was mine. The next morning, Sylvie, the owner of the guest house down the road, came up to deliver some more wood. She was in her 60s, with hands as cracked as mine. She started to comment on the weather, then stopped short when she saw the boards. She walked closer, ran her palm over the edge of the top one, lingered there longer than usual. Did you make this? I'm just starting, I said. She sized me up, as if taking my measurements. What'll it cost me for 6? I held my coffee cup. In 10 years, no one had ever asked what something I made was worth. 50 apiece, I said. Sylvie laughed, a short, sharp sound. From the ones that come through their nose? No, I said. 40 worse. She put the wood down and wiped her hands on her pants. I've been buying furniture for that guest house for 20 years. A handmade pine bedside table with an edge like that, I don't get for under 160. My face flushed. I don't want to overcharge. You're not overcharging. You're giving it away. She looked at me, unblinking. Who taught you to ask for less than you're worth? I didn't answer. She didn't press. 150 apiece. 6 bedside tables. Half now, half on delivery, and I want them by the 15th. The guest house is booked. She shook my hand. Hard, calloused palm. Just like my grandmother's. That night, I pulled out the yellow notebook, the same one where I'd written that massive figure, and on the back, I jotted down what was left in my account. $800. Rent, gas, food, wood. I did the math 3 times. It was enough for 2.5 months. I worked 14 straight days. I was up at 6 a.m., hands still stiff from the day before, out on the porch. By the 4th day, the blisters burst, and I had to tape my fingers to hold the chisel. By the 6th, I couldn't feel the tip of my right thumb. The worst was my lower back. At night, I'd lie face down on the floor, a bag of frozen peas on my waist, listening to the wind hit the window. I had never been so tired, not even when I worked double shifts and cooked for them afterward. But this was a different kind of tired. The other kind left me empty. This kind left me wanting to look at the work one more time before I turned off the light. I went to Walter's lumberyard 3 times. He showed me how to read the grain, how not to waste a board, and sold me a used angle for $1. The 3rd time, he was waiting with a can of tung oil on the counter. This is for the finish, he said. Don't use thick brush varnish. The wood needs to breathe. What does it cost? I asked. You pay when you get paid. I lowered my gaze, staring at the counter. I thought of my father, who'd said this wasn't a career. I thanked him, my voice strangely thick, and hurried out. During those 2 weeks, my phone never stopped ringing. Aunt Dorothy sent 3-minute voice messages. Family is family. Vivian texted single sentences. You're selfish. Mom is upset. My father didn't call once. My mother left 4 voicemails. In the last one, she just said, Your father hasn't slept, Eleanor. I listened to them all. I didn't answer any. On the evening of the 14th, the 6th table was finished. I rubbed the oil in, layer by layer, with a rag. The pine deepened in color, almost honey-toned, and when the porch light hit it from the side, you could see the grain running perfectly across the edge. I sat on the step, black hands, staring at the row. Sylvie arrived at 9 a.m. with her pickup. She put on her glasses, knelt beside the first table, and ran her fingers over the corner joint. She was silent for a long time. Where did you learn this? From my grandmother. I was 9. And what were you doing in Phoenix? I worked in an insurance office. Sylvie slowly stood up, brushing off her knees. What a waste. She handed me the rest of the payment in an envelope, forcing me to count it in front of her. $450. It was the first time in my adult life I'd held money that no one would demand back from me. The tables were in the rooms for 4 days. On Sunday, Sylvie called at noon. Get in your pickup and get over here right now. When I arrived at the guest house, a woman was standing at the reception desk. About 50, short gray hair, expensive jacket. Naomi Thorne. She bought furniture and crafts for a shop in Denver, in a neighborhood I later looked up and found to be very high-end. I slept in room 4, she said. I woke up at 6 and stared at that bedside table for half an hour. Sylvie wouldn't tell me where it came from until I threatened not to come back. She laughed. I didn't know what to do with my hands. Do you have a workshop? I have a porch. Do you have a brand? No. Do you have photos on your phone? Naomi nodded, as if none of this was a problem. She pulled out a small notebook and started writing. I want 10 pieces for the season. Bedside tables, 2 benches, a console. I'll pay $400 a piece, and the console extra, depending on size. You have 3 months. Can you do it? For $1,000 plus the console. I felt my heart pound in my ears, and again, my hands were cold, just like that night with the chicken at my parents' table. I took long enough to answer that Sylvie nudged me. I can do it, I said. I need a name for the label. I opened my mouth, and nothing came out. Think about it, Naomi said, leaving me a card and an $800 deposit check, my name beautifully written on it. I drove back, the check on the passenger seat. I looked at it about 4 times on the way, and then I did the only stupid thing I did that week. I pulled over, got out, and called my mother. She answered on the second ring. Eleanor. Her voice broke immediately. Oh, thank God. Are you okay? I'm fine, Mom. Is Dad there? Should I get him? No. I just wanted to tell you something. I sat on the edge of the bed, my leg trembling. I'm making furniture. A woman from Denver ordered 10 pieces from me. She's paying me $4,000. 2 seconds of silence. 4,000. Yes. Oh, Eleanor. She let out a slow breath. What a blessing. And without changing her tone, without even breathing, She continued. Because, you know, the bank has sent us the second letter already. Your father doesn't want to talk about it. You know how he is. If you could just front us 2 payments, while we get back on our feet. I listened to her. I could hear the kitchen clock in that house, the same one as always, ticking behind her voice. I didn't feel like screaming. That was the strange part. Just a tightening in my stomach. Mom. Yes. You didn't ask what I'm making. How? What I'm making? The furniture. You didn't even ask what it looks like. She went silent, and behind her, I heard my father's voice from the other room. Did you tell her about the bank account yet? I hung up. I stayed on the bed, phone face down on my leg. Then I stood up, put on my hoodie, and went to the porch to mark the first board. I started Naomi's order on the porch, and after 3 days, I realized it wouldn't be enough. 2 pieces didn't fit at once, and if it rained, I had to bring everything inside and sleep smelling of oil. Sylvie came on Thursday with 2 coffees and a key. There's a barn behind the guest house. No one's used it since my husband died. It has electricity, a roof, and a stove. Works if you kick it. What does it cost? I asked. $200 a month. You pay the first 2 after you've been paid. I swept that barn for an entire Saturday. I hauled out 3 wheelbarrows of rotted straw, a rusty gas tank, and a mouse nest under an old stroller. Cobwebs were in my ears. When I was done, I stood in the middle of the hall, broom in hand, and realized I was smiling. On Tuesday, my father's voicemail started. There were 6. The first was 4.5 minutes long. Eleanor, it's your father. Enough is enough, right? You've made your point. You've taught us a lesson. We've all cried. Your mother isn't doing well. She's not sleeping, just sitting in her room. And all this over some furniture. I could hear the TV in the background. Look, the woodworking thing is okay. As a hobby, it's fine. But this isn't a career, Eleanor. This is your hobby. You're 29, no degree, no husband, no kids, and now you're playing carpenter in the mountains, and in 2 years? What will you be doing in 2 years? By the 4th message, he was angry. And another thing, you have a home here. Hopefully, you'll remember that when the money runs out. In the 6th, he lowered his voice, speaking slowly, like to the customers at the auto parts store. Come back. Give back what you took. We won't talk about it anymore. No one will blame you. I listened to them all, standing in the middle of the barn, phone in one hand, the other on the plank wall. I felt heat in my face and cold in my fingers at the same time. My jaw began to ache from clenching. I didn't answer. I put my phone in my pocket and picked up the ruler. That same day, I started on the workbench. Not the one for the guest house, but my grandmother's. I closed my eyes and saw it perfectly. 7 feet long, the height exactly below my hip, the top made of 4 thick planks, the 4th a little lighter because she'd replaced it after dropping a can of thinner. The vise on the left, the drawer that always stuck and had to be lifted slightly. The round burn mark on the corner from my grandfather's cigar, the only thing of his she hadn't erased from the house. I remembered everything but one measurement. How far did the top overhang in the back? I called Aunt Dorothy. She answered on the first ring, screaming, Eleanor. Oh, sweetie, where are you? Your mother is, Aunt, I interrupted. I just need to ask one thing. My grandmother's workbench. Do you remember how far the top board overhung in the back? She went silent. I heard her turn down the telenovela. The bench. Yes, the one in the yard. Oh dear, she sighed. That bench was yours. My hand froze on the ruler. What? Your grandmother said it in front of everyone. In the hospital, 2 days before she died, that the bench and the tools were for you. That you were the only one who ever sat and watched her. Your mother was there, your father, your Uncle Bobby, and me. No one told me anything. I thought you already knew. She lowered her voice, as if someone might hear her. Eleanor, your father sold it 3 weeks after the funeral for $300. A man from Chandler picked it up in a pickup. I told him, Raymond, that bench belongs to the girl. And he said, the girl isn't asking for it. And we need the money for Vivian's graduation dress. The long white one, $300. I sat on the barn step, phone still to my ear. My aunt kept talking. Something about family being family, not to be upset, that she was just telling me things as they were. Her voice sounded far away. Both hands were cold, and a pressure was on my chest, as if something was lying on it. I thought of Vivian's graduation, the white dress, the photos in the garden. I'd been late because I had to lock up at the office, and my mother had scolded me in front of the guests for being so useless. Aunt, I said, How far did the board overhang in the back? She went silent again. About 4 fingers, dear. I remember her leaning against it there. I hung up. I didn't cry. I wanted to, but it wouldn't come. I just sat there for about 10 minutes, staring at the dirt floor of the barn, teeth clenched, hands open on my knees. Then I stood up and worked until 4 a.m. I cut the 4 boards, planed them one by one until the surface was even and warm to the touch. I built the frame with crossed legs, exactly like hers, because that's how it wouldn't wobble. I put in the drawer that stuck, intentionally, with the same bad play, and I left 4 fingers of overhang in the back. When daylight broke, I pushed it to the center of the barn. It weighed about 180 pounds. I ran my hand over the top, and sawdust clung to my sweaty palm. I lifted the green toolbox and placed it on top, in the left corner, where she'd kept it. At 9 a.m., Naomi called. Good morning. I need the name for the labels before Friday, or they'll ship them nameless. And you look like you're just starting. I stared at the bench. Vega, I said. Just Vega? Just Vega. That was my grandmother's maiden name. Naomi was silent for a second on the other end. Perfect. Sounds like you've been doing this for 40 years. I've been doing it for 20, I said. It just took me 20 years to start. I delivered the 10 pieces in the last week of October. Naomi sent me a photo the next Thursday. The console was in the shop window, with a brass plate screwed underneath the edge. Vega, Colorado. In 15 days, everything was sold except for one bench. She ordered 12 more pieces and increased the price to $470. I hired a local kid, Liam, who came 3 afternoons a week to sand and sweep for $14 an hour. I bought a used table saw. I put a small, hand-painted tin sign in front of the barn, crooked on one side. One Wednesday in November, at 4 p.m., a rental car parked in front. Vivian got out, sunglasses on, in November, in the mountains. She wore new boots and a white jacket that wasn't warm enough for the cold. She stopped and looked at the barn. Here? Here. She came inside. She wrinkled her nose. It smells awful. That's tung oil. She walked slowly between the pieces, touching everything with her fingertips, like you touch clothes in a store where you don't intend to buy. Liam stopped sanding and looked at me. I gestured for him to continue. I drove 12 hours, Vivian said. No one told you to come, I replied. Mom's not doing well, Eleanor. Mom's doing the same as always. She took off her glasses. Her eyes were swollen, but not from crying about me. I knew that face. It was the one she made when things hadn't gone her way. I'm moving into a new apartment, she said. One in Tempe, and I was thinking. She gestured with her chin at the long walnut console on the sawhorses, which had taken me 3 weeks to build. That would look incredible in my living room. I wiped my hands on my apron and said nothing. So it comes from the family and stays in the family, she continued. And you'll help me move. After all, you've already taken everything out of the house. That console is sold. Then make another one. Others are 3 weeks of work. Oh, Eleanor. She laughed, her mouth closed. Now you want to take money from your sister. I walked to the bench, took out the notebook and pen, and slowly wrote in large letters, so it was easy to read. Walnut console, 2 meters, for drawers. $400. Transport to Phoenix, $220. 50% deposit. 8 weeks. I tore off the sheet and handed it to her. Vivian read it twice. First her neck turned red, then her face. Are you serious? It's the same price I give everyone. I'm not everyone. I'm your sister. Yes. And that's why I'm writing it down, so there are no misunderstandings. She threw the sheet onto the bench. Liam left the barn without a word and started sweeping outside. Do you know what you are? Vivian said. You're bitter. That's what you are. You punished us with the furniture, and now you're punishing us again. Only with that holy face, here in your barn, with your little apron. Her chin began to tremble. Dad says you'll be back in a year, just let it go. That this will pass, just like night school did. And Mom says every night in the kitchen that he's right, that you'll be back in a year, and hopefully you haven't spent everything. I remained silent. I waited for the heat that rose from my gut to pass, because I would have screamed in that moment. Vivian, I said, do you remember your graduation dress? She blinked. What about it? The long white one they bought you. Yes. And do you know where that money came from? She stared at me as if I'd asked about the weather in another country. No idea. From my parents. Where else? And there it was. She wasn't lying, wasn't playing dumb, wasn't lowering her gaze. She truly didn't know. It had genuinely never occurred to her to ask where anything came from. Neither the dress, nor the trip, nor the apartment, nor the fridge, nor the July vacation. I felt something strange. It wasn't anger. It was like a noise going silent that had been on for years, a noise you only hear when it finally stops. From my grandmother's workbench, I said. My father sold it 3 weeks after the funeral for $300. That bench was mine. She said so in the hospital, in front of everyone, including my mother. Vivian opened her mouth. She closed it again. You're making that up. Ask Aunt Dorothy. You're making that up, Eleanor. You've gone crazy. Her voice trembled. She grabbed her bag. I don't even know why I came. Me neither, I said. She stopped in the barn doorway, outlined against the light. For a second, I thought she'd say something else, ask how I was, or what the console was made of, or how long a board needed to dry. Anything. Dad's right, she said. You imagine too much. And she left. I stayed in the barn. The car engine receded. I looked at my hands, and they were both shaking from the wrists down. I sat on my grandmother's bench and waited for it to pass. It took about 5 minutes. Liam poked his head in the door. Should I keep sanding, boss? It was the first time anyone had called me that. Keep going, I said. I picked up the discarded offer sheet from the floor, folded it, and placed it in the drawer that stuck. I don't know why, but it felt like I might want to read it again someday. At 7 p.m., Naomi called with the quick tone she used when she'd made up her mind. We're opening a seasonal pop-up in Scottsdale, Arizona. I want 14 of your pieces shipped, with the name big on the back wall. Can you do it? Scottsdale was half an hour from my parents' house. Yes, I said. The 14 pieces left for Arizona on the first Monday in December, in a trailer Naomi sent right to the barn door. Liam and I wrapped them one by one in moving blankets, secured with fabric ties. The last to go was a walnut bench with crossed legs, just like my grandmother had made them. Naomi sent photos on Friday. The name was on the back wall of the store in black letters, 2 feet high. Vega. Underneath, in smaller print, handcrafted in Colorado. I sat on the barn floor, staring at the photo, the stove on, my feet propped on a piece of wood to avoid the cold from the floor. I zoomed in with my fingers until the letters blurred. 9 days later, on a Sunday, my mother called. I answered, thinking it was about the holidays. In the background, I heard store noise, music, people. Eleanor. Her voice was strangely strained. Where are you? In the workshop. I'm in Scottsdale. She breathed loudly through her nose. I'm here with your Aunt Dorothy, buying a gift for Vivian's apartment. A new store. Very nice. On Camelback. I said nothing. Why is your grandmother's maiden name on that wall? Because it's my name, Mom. And it's my work. No. I heard her walk away. The music noise faded, as if she'd stepped onto the sidewalk. Don't do this to me. I know those crossed legs. I saw them for 20 years in the yard of that house. That woman made them exactly the same way. Yes, I said. And then she started. Do you know what that old woman did to me, Eleanor? Do you know? The day I married your father, she cornered me in the kitchen and told my mother that I was no good for this family, that I was a show-off. For 23 years, she treated me like an intruder in my own home. And when you were born, her voice broke, but with rage, not sadness. When you were born, your father gave you her name, without asking me. Without asking me, Eleanor. I was in the hospital bed, and he'd already gone to sign the papers. I felt a weight on my chest, as if someone had sat on it. And then you became just like her, she continued, quietly. With your hands, always into something, with that way of looking at me without saying anything. Exactly the same. I saw you on the steps of that yard with the sandpaper, and I felt, she broke off. What did you feel, Mom? Nothing, it doesn't matter. Just tell me that woman isn't intruding in my house again, she said. So, are you happy? I stood in the middle of the barn. I felt hot ears and cold hands and realized I'd clenched my jaw, so tight it hurt behind my ear. 29 years of things that didn't make sense suddenly aligned in about 3 seconds. The vacations where there was never enough room. The night school I had to drop out of because help was needed at home. Vivian's new clothes and mine from a cousin. My room that was also a storage closet. All of it wasn't because I was the older one, or the responsible one, or the strong one. It was because I had the face of the woman who had humiliated her in the kitchen. Mom, I said, my grandmother's workbench. She was silent. She left it to me. She said so in the hospital, in front of you all. Eleanor, your father sold it for $300. Your father did what was necessary. Who told him to sell it? Silence. I heard a car pass on her end. Answer me. I did, she said. I told him to. And you know what? I'd do it again. That old thing filled the yard with sawdust, and you spent your afternoons out there instead of being inside with us. I wanted you to have a normal life, Eleanor. A career, a husband. Not to end up like her, cooped up in a yard, alone, with cracked hands. She wasn't alone, I said. She had me. I hung up before she could answer. I sat on the bench, the real one, the one I had built. I placed both hands on the top and felt the wood. It was cold on one side, warm on the side near the stove. I felt sick and wanted to laugh at the same time. I did neither. Sylvie came by about half an hour later. Her face red from the frost. Everything all right. My mother hated my grandmother. Sylvie stayed in the doorway. She didn't say poor thing. She didn't say how is that possible. She didn't give me that pitying look people do. And what does that change about what you're doing? I considered it. Nothing, I said. Then put on your gloves. It's cold. I worked until 11 p.m., planing, sanding, marking cuts. Liam left at 7, and I continued alone. The stove crackled, and the snow hit the tin roof. At 1 a.m., the phone rang again. My parents' house. I picked up without saying hello. Eleanor. It was my father. I hadn't heard his voice live in 4 months. He didn't sound angry. That was the detail. He sounded like he did to the good customers at the auto parts store, slow, friendly, words a little drawn out. Listen, your mother told me everything. And you know, today I went to that store to see it with my own eyes. He paused. It's beautiful, what you do, dear. Really, it's truly beautiful. You know, it makes you wonder, how much do you sell a month? Roughly. Why? For nothing. For nothing. Because this isn't a hobby anymore, is it? This is a business. And a business needs someone to do the numbers, to talk to people, to organize things. You're very good with your hands, Eleanor. I always said that. Always, he always said that. A laugh escaped me through my nose. What, he asked. Nothing, Dad. We're coming on Saturday. Your mother and I, we've already gassed up. It's 12 hours. But you do it. He lowered his voice, satisfied with himself. We need to talk business, dear. On Wednesday, 3 days before they arrived, I signed the biggest contract of my life. A hotel group in the mountains, for properties between Colorado and Wyoming, 40 pieces in 8 months. Headboards, footstools, reception consoles. $46,000, half up front. Naomi made the connection and accompanied me to the meeting with a folder under her arm. And when the manager asked if I had production capacity, I answered before Naomi could open her mouth. With 2 helpers. Yes, I've already arranged them. I hadn't. I found them on Thursday. I raised Sylvie's barn rent to $400 without her asking. She was mad at me for 2 days. On Saturday, she came by at 11 a.m. I heard the van before I saw it. My father parked next to the tin sign and got out, stretching, shirt tucked in, sunglasses on, surveying the barn like someone inspecting a property. My mother slowly got out on the other side, wearing her good sweater. They came in. Liam and the new kid were standing in the back. I gestured to them, and they went out for a smoke break. My father walked through the hall, hands on his hips. It's big, cold, but big. He knocked on a finished headboard with his knuckles. And what does this cost? $800 apiece. He whistled. My mother hadn't moved from the door. She stared at a single spot, unblinking. I followed her gaze and knew exactly what she saw. The bench. The top made of 4 boards, the vise on the left, the crooked drawer, the 4 fingers of overhang in the back, and in the corner, the green toolbox held together with wire. The blood drained from her face. She held onto the doorframe. Where did you get that? I made it. From memory. She was silent. She sat on a plastic chair without anyone telling her to. My father didn't notice. He had already placed a folder on my workbench and opened it. Look, dear, I brought you some things. He pulled out printed sheets. Here's how to register a company in Arizona. Here's about the insurance. Here are some numbers I ran. He handed me a sheet in his handwriting. I ran the auto parts store for 18 years, Eleanor. I know suppliers. I know collections. I can handle people. You have the talent in your hands. I'll bring the head. And how would that look? He straightened up, satisfied. We'll be partners. 40% for me, 60% for you. I manage, you produce. And your mother will come too. She'll help with the calls. She's got the gift of gab. He smiled. The argument is over. Family, working together again. I looked at him. He wore the same blue shirt as always, a little slacker at the shoulders. He looked old. Dad, for months ago you said this wasn't a career. Oh, Eleanor, don't start that again. You said it was a hobby, and what would I be doing in 2 years? People say things when they're angry. And 20 years ago, you sold your mother's workbench for $300. The smile slowly faded, like air leaking out of something. That bench was mine, I said. She told you in the hospital, in front of my mother and Aunt Dorothy. No one told me. No one asked me. You loaded it onto a pickup, and with the money, you bought Vivian her graduation dress. Your grandmother said a lot of things at the end. She wasn't clear-headed anymore. She was perfectly clear. My mother stood up from the chair. Raymond, that's enough now. He raised his hands. Calm down, calm down. Are we talking about a bench from 20 years ago, or about a business? I opened the drawer that stuck, the one I'd intentionally made crooked. I took out my checkbook and wrote, standing, leaning on the top. I tore off the check and placed it in front of him. $300. What is this? Your bench. I'm paying you for it. It's settled. He stared at the paper without touching it. Don't be ridiculous, Eleanor. This is the only money of mine you'll ever touch in your life. He looked up. The salesman's voice was gone. We're your family. Yes, I said. And for 10 years, that meant I paid, and you decided. $112,419. I have the papers. I never billed you for it, and I won't, but I will never sign anything with you again. You'll regret it. Maybe, but it'll be my mistake, not yours. My mother grabbed her purse. At the door, she stopped and looked at the bench one last time. Do you hate me? She asked. No, I said. I just don't see you anymore. They drove off at 1 p.m. The check remained on the top. I folded it and put it in the drawer next to the offer Vivian had thrown. I finished the hotel contract in 7 months, one ahead of schedule. I hired Liam full-time and raised his pay to $18 an hour. In March, I bought Sylvie's barn and the 2 acres behind it. She sold it to me cheap, saying, if I tell anyone the price, you'll sue me. Vivian texted in April. It just said, sorry. I replied that she could come whenever she wanted. The door was open for visiting, not for asking. She hasn't come yet. Maybe someday. My mother sends messages on Sundays, photos of the house, the dog, of nothing. I reply briefly. There's no affection, but there's no lie either, and for now, that's enough. In September, I had the new sign painted. Black letters, walnut wood, screwed above the workshop door, Vega. Below it, smaller, my grandmother's full name, and mine, which are the same. Today, I drive a new pickup, which I paid for in cash, no financing, and without asking anyone for permission. And every day, I park it in front of a workshop that belongs to me, with the last name my mother wanted to erase, painted above the door. I didn't do it for them to see. I did it because these hands, the ones no one wanted to look at, were the only thing in that house that was truly worth anything. Do you think I was too harsh, or did I do exactly what needed to be done? Let me know in the comments below. I'm reading every single one.